I hope every single person that rocks with the silver and black hits that like button, because at the end of the day, I want the Raiders to be happy and I want our players to be happy. So my objective from today's show is to get the Raiders and Jakobi Meyers in a win-win situation. That way the Raiders can just win, baby. Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, I'm going to tell you how the Las Vegas Raiders should handle the Jakobi Meyers trade request. When we got the news rolling in earlier this week, it felt like a little bit of a gut punch. Now, I understand for the real ones, the people that subscribe to this channel, you know and you knew that there was some frustration with Jakobi from the Raiders. If you watch this video, we were the very first to report on it late last week. And my objective and my overall reason why I wanted to be able to make this show is because I know how important Jakobi Meyers is to this team. I know how important it is to also, though, pay players the best way to pay them, because nobody is above the shield. So because I am saying that, I believe today I have created a win-win scenario for John Spytek, for Pete Carroll, for the Las Vegas Raiders, and also number 16, Jakobi Meyers. So if you don't know the latest going on right now with number 16, earlier this Monday, Jakobi requested a trade from the Las Vegas Raiders. And I want to be very clear here. He wants to stay with the organization, but he also just wants a new deal. I understand people wanting to get paid what they feel like they're worth, and I'm sure Jakobi looks at his contract right now and he's like, I'm worth a lot more than that. And for the Raiders, they're going, well, we've already drafted a few players. Are you going to be a part of the long-term plan? You know, that's kind of up in the air a little bit. But for a player like Jakobi, who's coming off a career year, 87 catches, over 1,000 yards, and he's got 1 year left on his contract with $0 million guaranteed, you know, that's the type of deal that typically ends up either A, getting a contract extension, or they're able to work on something. And I think Jakobi has made that point very clear the entire offseason that he wants to be a Raider. He wants to stay here, and he's even, despite requesting a trade, and despite the Raiders going, we're not interested in trading you, he's still out there at the practice, right? There's a lot of other star players that were skipped in practices, skipping, non-mandatory things. Jakobi was showing up, and he was showing out. Now, when you look at the highest paid wide receivers per year number, I'll be honest, this is not where I think Jakobi should be having conversations with the Raiders. If he feels like he deserves this amount of money, I think he's got to look at himself in the mirror a little bit. And I think when you look at and you talk about a win-win situation, it is an opportunity for the Raiders to look themselves in the mirror and go, do we want to win right now? If that answer is yes, we are a better football team this season with Jakobi Meyers. I also think Jakobi's got to look at himself in the mirror and go, am I somebody that deserves to be on that list? My answer to that is no. So in order for this to be a win-win situation, the Raiders got to take a little bit of a slice of humble pie and plan for the future. I also think Jakobi's got to take a little bit of a slice of humble pie and also plan for his future. Luckily, I believe I have constructed the perfect overall plan here for the Raiders and for Jakobi Meyers to meet that win-win. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the very first thing that I would do if I was the silver and black. I would hit him again with, this is what I would want a contract to look like, because Jakobi's looking for that longer-term deal. And my first contract projection is going to be the one that I've been continuously rolling with on this show. It's a 3-year deal, $54 million. That is $18 million per year. And when you put his new contract with his current contract, it's a 4-year, $68.9 million deal, $17.2 million per year. It makes him the 25th highest paid wide receiver per season. To me, that is a fair value based on where the Raiders are at right now and based on how talented Jakobi Meyers is. If he goes, no, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a shorter-term deal with more money. Okay, 2 years, $38 million. I'm going to give you a little bit less guarantee, but your overall year, like money per year, goes up a little bit. You are still paid, though, the 25th highest paid wide receiver in the National Football League. And I don't know anything about how much money the Raiders have offered. I have no idea about the length of contracts. All the contract projections that you're seeing are what I personally would do. Here's the issue, though. Spytek recently put out a tweet saying Jakobi Meyers is entering year 3. of a 3-year, $33 million deal. So the first deal that he signed with the Raiders, 3 for $33. To me, I'm almost doubling that type of contract for Jakobi, and in my personal opinion, I am rewarding him for the numbers that he's put up and kind of the bullshit that he's had to deal with, all the different coaches, all the different quarterback plays. But here's my problem. He projects towards a 2-year, $60 million extension in our system. So if Jakobi hears that, if Jakobi's agent sees that, and I know how agents work, I know how players work, they probably look at the numbers, they crunch the numbers, and if they're seeing in our system that you should get 2 for $60 million, it wouldn't shock me if that's what they're asking for the Las Vegas Raiders, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we got a little bit of a holdup. I don't want to go down a road where we're not winning football games, and I don't want to have any drama with a number 1 wide receiver. I've dealt with it so many flipping times covering this team between Amari Cooper, happy to have you back though, between Devontae Adams, between Antonio Brown. I want a humble wide receiver, but $30 million for Jakobi Meyers, if that's what it costed right now, would you do it? Give me a yes, give me a no. This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. My answer coming up after a YouTube ad break. I love me some Jakobi, and I think he does a lot of solid things for us, but that contract is not a win-win for the Raiders. It's a win for Jakobi, but it's not a win for the Raiders. And as much as I love 16, as much as I know that he makes this football team better, nobody is above the shield. And I'm not going to put another player's money contract ahead of the Raiders being able to win. So I want to be very clear again on today's program. My objective, to make Jakobi Meyers happy and to make the Las Vegas Raiders happy and overall a better football organization because I want to win, baby. So one of the things that I think that the Raiders could do, and this is why I believe I have created a win-win situation here, I think you got to look at dominoes. And I think NFL teams learn from each other just like people, you learn from the past. You learn from history. That's what smart people do. That's what smart, people, countries, I don't know, that's what everyone does. I would look at the way that the Bengals have handled this Trey Hendrickson situation, not from Hendrickson sitting out and all that drama, but what the Cincinnati Bengals did, they said, all right, man, if we're having some issues over the guarantees, if we're having some issues over the length of the contract, what if I just give you a raise? And they actually gave him a $14 million raise this season. So essentially, Trey Hendrickson went from making about $16 million this season to now he's making 30, and he has the chance, I believe, to make up to $34 million in incentives. To me, that's exactly what I would want to do here with Jakobi Meyers. And based on the percentages with Trey Hendrickson, that would be about an $8 million raise this upcoming season for Jakobi. So for a player who's got a base salary at about 10, but his cap hit is about $14 million, that puts his new contract at 1 year, $22.9 million. That deal makes him the 19th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. But also what I would give Jakobi is I would give him the opportunity to make more in incentives. The $30 million, that's a little bit too high. But you got to look at it as 2 years for $60 million. Then you add the other year. It's essentially like a 3 for $75. In my mind, that's $25 million. And I hope I'm making sense here. So I would give Jakobi Meyers the opportunity to make up to $25 million in incentives if he, eclipses a certain amount of catches, if he goes over a certain amount of yards. But I'm also not a stat guy, and I don't give a shit what players do in terms of stats. I care about if we're out there winning football games, because you do this extension if you believe Jakobi helps you win this season and beyond. So if you do that, I would also tie it into whether or not the Raiders win 10 games, whether or not the Raiders make the playoffs, whether or not the Raiders win the AFC West. You give them all those additional incentives, because if the Raiders are doing that, then this was absolutely positively a good deal. The other reason why that's a smart deal for Jakobi Meyers is he's getting more money, he's getting more guarantees. He also then has the opportunity to go out and hit the open market in 2026 as a wide receiver. That is a win for Jakobi Meyers. So coming up next here on the show is why I think it's helpful for the Raiders. Because for Jakobi, he's 28 right now. He's going to be 29 in the middle of this season. At age 29, hitting the open market, he's going to have a huge, huge chance to cash in on a big-time deal, and it might be his final chance to be able to cash in on that big-time deal. 29 years old is sometimes looked at as that teeter-totter for wide receivers. We're going to give him that opportunity. But y'all are watching this because this is the Raiders Report, and I'm trying to come up with a win-win, and I'll show you what that is here for the Raiders in just a moment. Before I do, huge shout-out to our sponsor here, PrizePicks, for always hooking up the nation. And I feel like every time I play PrizePicks, it's a win-win because even when I don't win, I still have a lot of fun watching the players, watching the games, and you're just so much more invested into that 2, 3, 4 hours, however long that game is going on. So if you're trying to play PrizePicks, I really do recommend that you do so because it's the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Since we're speaking about Jakobi Meyers today, I wanted to be able to show you Jakobi in my PrizePicks lineup. I took the more on 70.5 receptions. He had 87 last season. I know the Raiders went out and they got Amari Cooper, which makes me feel better about going less on Jack Besh there. But this is 20 to win $320. And if you want to roll with my lineup, then listen up because I need you to download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game, and if you need those links, they're going to be down in the comments. They're going to be in the description of today's show. I love PrizePicks, and I'm telling y'all, you're going to love it too. It just makes the game so much more fun. So coming up here, why this is helpful for the Raiders, and because it's got to be a win-win. That contract that I offered Jakobi, the 1 year where he's making more, in my personal opinion, that is a win for Jakobi Meyers. So now we got to get the winning side here for the Raiders. The first reason why this helps the silver and black, and it's a minor one maybe to some people, but depending on who you listen to, depending on who you follow, there has been other Raiders beat reporters that have also reported this. It has been after I was the first one to report it, but I said up here on this show, and I said that I was told by a player, and I'm just going to say it like this. The whole situation that ended up going down with Jakobi requesting a trade and the whole, contract negotiations, you got to remember, Jakobi is such a well-liked, well-respected player in that organization and in that locker room. So when Jakobi requested that trade, and then a few hours later, the Raiders went out and they signed Amari Cooper, that didn't sit well with some people. I'm just being honest with you. It has nothing to do with Amari Cooper. It just has everything to do with the utmost respect that this team has for Jakobi Meyers. And I also know that this is me thinking this. I have not been told this by any player that the statement around Christian Wilkins has made certain players unhappy. But even though the Wilkins situation is weird, it's a weird situation. Wilkins was a player that at the beginning was well-liked and well-received, and even when he was leaving, there were certain players that liked him. There were certain players that well-received him. There were some others, that definitely didn't feel that way. But the words I want you to read here are this. This franchise has a commitment to excellence on and off the field. Jakobi Meyers has shown the Las Vegas Raiders that he has commitment to excellence on and off the field to this organization despite all the craziness that has happened with all the different head coaches, with all the different quarterbacks. Jakobi Meyers showed you nothing but loyalty this entire offseason. And I'm telling y'all, if the Raiders do not reward Jakobi in some way, that's going to rub some other players in that locker room wrong because they're going to go, well, you're not backing up what you're preaching. You're being a little bit of a hypocrite. And if a guy like Jakobi, who's coming off a career year, and you traded for a quarterback, and you gave that quarterback an extension, he's your number one guy. If he did everything that you asked him, commitment to excellence, on and off the field, showing up to non-mandatory things, and you're not willing to reward a player like that, that's going to worry some people going, well, are they going to do that same thing to me? And the Raiders, the way that this team's trying to be built, you don't want star players wondering if that's going to happen to you. I'll be very clear on that. The next reason here of why this is good for the Raiders it would end up being a contract year for Jakobi. And if Jakobi knows that he's about to hit the open market in 2026, salary cap's probably going to go up yet again, which is smart. But also, there's a big TV deal that's about to roll in here in the year 2028, and it's going to make a lot of people a lot of money. If I was Jakobi Meyers, I would love the opportunity to hit the open market at age 29, coming off a year that you're going to have a better quarterback, you're going to have a better offense, and I anticipate he's going to be around numbers like he's had essentially the past 3 seasons here, because I'll tell you this, I bet you he would take less yards, less receptions to get more touchdowns, because touchdowns get you paid in the NFL. Touchdowns is what really lights up the old checkbook for a lot of teams out there, and I know that that matters. But then Jakobi gets to hit that open market in the year 2026 as a 29-year-old, probably signs a 2-year, maybe 3-year deal, and then he's going to have another opportunity to cash in big time in the year 2028. But having your number one receiver be motivated to hit that contract year, you know damn well that's going to help out the Las Vegas Raiders, because you're not getting a player that you just paid a bunch of money to. They get a little bit lazy. That's not the case, and Jakobi's not even that type of player. So a contract year for Jakobi is a very, very good reason here of why I believe it could end up being a true win-win. Now, I have another reason here, and the next one is around the Raiders deciding his 2026 future. I put this out there because the Raiders right now probably look at it in this regime with John Spytek and Pete Carroll, and they're probably looking at it going, well, I wasn't the person that signed Jakobi to those numbers. And that's totally fair. But this way, you get to decide his future. You get to decide if he's a good connection with Geno Smith. And let me be clear here, he would be a great connection with Geno Smith. I think what Jakobi brings to the table is very similar to what a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba brought to Seattle, and that was honestly, Geno's go-to guy in a lot of clutch situations, especially on third down. So for the Raiders, if you don't like what you see, you can let him go and you can let him hit open market. You let him hit free agency. If you do like what you see, you can keep him here on this roster because Amari Cooper's on a 1-year deal. Jakobi Meyers on a 1-year deal, right? Then you're really relying on Trey Tucker, Jack Bech, Dante to take that next step. But this at least gives our organization an opportunity to evaluate and make the decision on his future next offseason. So coming up next here on the show, the biggest reason why this is a win-win. I already feel like I've created the win for Jakobi, but this next reason here is why the Raiders should try to give Jakobi Meyers a 1-year deal, give him some extra money, because this thing coming up is going to change the game. Now, I know a lot of y'all are already subscribed. We've been getting new subs left and right on this channel. We're inching closer and closer to 199,000 subs. I want to get to 200K by the time the season kicks off. But I put this video out 8 days ago, and I told the entire nation, I said, hey, there's some frustration right now brewing between Jakobi and the Raiders. You can believe me if you want at this point. I feel like I have shown y'all that we got sources here. We put out a lot of good content, and you will become a smarter Raiders fan. You're going to run laps around your Raiders friends if you watch this show. And I hope videos like this where I warned everyone, if we don't get a contract extension, a trade could end up happening. And if you don't believe me, it's in this video 8 days ago, before Rap, before everybody else reported it. You would have heard it first here on the show. This is why you subscribe. Let's go to the final reason, though, of why this helps the Raiders. A 2026 comp pick. I love comp picks. I love extra picks. And the way that the NFL has structured this new comp formula, it rewards teams to pay players like Jakobi Meyers. And in this exact same situation here, if the Raiders go out and they give him that 1-year contract, and if Jakobi has one hell of a season, you make that decision whether or not you want to bring him back. And I believe that Jakobi is going to have a good season. If you decide not to bring him back next offseason, based on the comp formula, I'm going to guess that you're going to be around a 3rd, 4th, at absolute worst. If you get a 5th-round pick for Jakobi, it's him having a bad season. If you go out and you believe, you're like, all right, he's probably going to have, let's say, 70 catches. Let's say he gets around 900 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's a 4th-round comp pick. If he's somewhere around the numbers he put up last season with an extra touchdown or 2, you're going to get a 3rd-round comp pick for that, because it's also going to be based on how much money he signs on that new deal. So this, you give him a raise this season. That makes Jakobi Meyers happy. Also, it sets up the Raiders for their future in 2026 to be able to get a comp pick. And let's be transparent. If Jakobi Meyers is on the open market right now because he asked for that trade, you're not going to get a third or a fourth round pick for him. I honestly think the most you're going to get is a fourth, and I would compare it to the Keenan Allen situation last season where Chicago traded the fourth round pick to get him. So right now you already know that no matter what, I'm going to get a pick in 2026 if I trade him. But if you're telling me if I trade him right now, I'm probably not going to get the value that I would next season compared to if I just pay him $8 million extra dollars, $10 million extra dollars, and then I'm going to be able to get that extra comp pick next season and keep my wide receiver one. I don't know how that's not a win-win situation for literally everybody underneath the sun. So in conclusion, my objective today, win for Jakobi Meyers, win for the Las Vegas Raiders. It is a win for the Raiders to give Jakobi a raise in 2025. Jakobi gets more guaranteed. Then he gets to test the open market next offseason if the Raiders don't want to bring him back. The Silver and Black get their number one receiver to make sure that the investment they made in Geno Smith ends up paying off. And if they decide to move on from him, you get a comp pick next offseason that is going to be worth more than if you were to trade Jakobi Meyers away right flipping now. If that's not a win-win situation, I don't know what it is. And if you agree with that statement, subscribe to the Raiders Report because that's the type of content we bring here every single day. Now, I am getting ready to hop on out of here, and I just want to throw out a little bit of a reminder. Tomorrow, I'm going to be live on the Raiders Report at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's going to be happy hour. We're the type of channel here where you're going to get the content like you got today, and I'm also going to be able to throw back some beers on tomorrow's show. But we are giving away our 2 final spots in our Fantasy Football League. So if you want a chance to get in, whoever bangs the most in August, you're going to have a shot to get in. That race is going to be a tough one to win, but you do at least have an opportunity to win that raffle. $5 super thanks, $5 super chat. We're going to put a big old wheel in. We're going to spin it, and we're going to find out the last 2 members in our Raiders Fantasy Football League tomorrow.